Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hey there, welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, where we're expanding the natural family planning conversation. I'm your host, Ellen Holloway. Yolanda, if you don't remember from one of the first episodes that we had on this podcast, is a mom of two and really just amazing. When I first met her, within about 5 minutes of meeting each other, we were already talking NFP. So she's just kind of my go-to NFP conversation person. And Yolanda and I are discussing how to talk to your doctor about NFP. We share some practical tips as well as our examples of exactly what not to do when you're talking to your doctor. And with that, let's get started. All right. Well, welcome. We are welcoming back Yolanda back to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you back, Yolanda.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. I really enjoyed listening to the other episodes. I've learned so much.
Oh, good. I know. I feel like I have really been learning a ton having these conversations, and I have just been enjoying all of these conversations so much. So I hope that our listeners are as well. I'm glad that you have been enjoying them too, Yolanda.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah. All right. So today we are continuing our series of talking to blank about NFP. And today we are talking to doctors about NFP. So this is a tough one. This is so hard.
It is hard. It is hard because it's just hard to talk about. It's hard to talk about NFP in general.
Yeah.
So imagine when you go to an environment where they're all about the science.
Yeah. And an environment where it hasn't historically been taught, you know, I've heard stories from doctors where it's like, oh yeah, the women's health part was like 3 weeks long, and all that they suggested was prescribe the pill for like every single problem in women's health. And so fertility awareness and natural family planning is not something that has been talked about in the training for doctors very much at all.
Absolutely. And, you know, now that you bring that up, there's other things also that I hear my doctor friends bring up, like we also aren't taught about nutrition and things like that. So we shouldn't be surprised that sometimes I think I was raised with this notion of like doctors know everything. And then as I grew up, I realized, oh, wait a second, you know, it's like us when we go to school. There's some things that really sink in and some things that don't. And we just need to be ready for that.
Exactly. Well, and we should also remember that our doctors are human. If we expected them to know every single thing about the human body, that would be insane.
Absolutely.
You know, I think it's definitely a detriment to the education of doctors that fertility awareness isn't a part of their education in women's health. But also, we need to allow our doctors grace in that they have a lot of other learning and training that they need to do, and they just haven't been adequately taught in this field.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. And I will say, when I reflect on, you know, the first time I had to bring it up, I'm part of an HMO. And when you walk into the HMO, they have all these posters that have like diversity, and, you know, you have people of all kinds of color. And so they work really hard to promote an inclusive environment where I get healthcare. And sure, you know, the staff is really diverse. So they work really hard to be comfortable. And I remember the first time I was in the OBGYN department filling out these documents, they ask you to select which method of birth control do you use. And natural family planning is an option.
Wow.
So I remember looking at Jorge and my husband and saying, oh my gosh, look at this. I told them that they have it as an option. And I then jumped to the assumption then that because NFP was listed as one of the methods they see if you're using, that means they're friendly. That was a huge jump. That was a huge jump on my end. And I remember and I never had to bring it up because when you're pregnant, you know, for the most part, they don't really talk about birth control until the end.
Right, exactly. It's not like you're going to get pregnant again.
Yeah, and I remember still going to my first checks when I was doing NFP and hoping they would ask me about like something so I could show them my charts, but that never came up. And for the most part, doctors don't bring it up. But and I think it was either right before, I know actually it was like a month after I delivered, the doctor asked me, the OBGYN, she goes, okay, so, and what are we doing for birth control? And I remember at that moment being completely flooded by the nervousness of saying NFP out loud.
Yes.
And I don't know if this happened to you, but it's like all the loaded, triggered emotions I've seen from other people when you talk about NFP, all of a sudden just flooded me. And I remember the way I answered the question was, oh, we're doing NFP? Kind of almost like asking her for permission.
Yeah.
And, because, and I just had this feeling that this wasn't going to go well.
Oh my gosh. The way that you said that, I experienced the exact same feeling of just like this flood of scare. Like I was scared to say NFP out loud.
Totally. And it's because it's such a loaded term. I think the only other time I had said NFP outside of like my home environment was at a, believe it or not, a Catholic retreat. And somebody put NFP as one of the questions they had about in this like anonymous Q&A with the priest. And I remember when the priest read the question about, can we talk about NFP? Somebody raised her hand, a Catholic in the retreat, and she said, it doesn't work. She said, the church needs to stop promoting it. So when you hear things like that, and then you're talking to this doctor who probably doesn't share the faith, just based on things that she's been promoting in the, around birth control, that kind of thing. I felt like I was really going out there when I was saying NFP, in a space, even outside, well aware it was outside of a faith. So even within a faith space, I had heard not good things about it. So now to say it in a doctor's office, that was really hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have that same experience of like saying NFP out loud at the postpartum doctor's appointment was one of the first time. It was probably the first time that I had ever mentioned NFP outside of like my home and very close friends or like very close, like other parishioners at my church. So that it's very nerve-wracking to do that.
Yeah. And so I remember saying it and it coming out tentative and almost like a question, like, is it okay with you, doctor? And I remember she kind of straightened up and looked at me and her voice got really thin. Her eyes got really wide and she goes, well, how's that going to work?
Oh.
And I remember, when you just feel like you're just going to get super defensive, like I could feel the blood run, mind you, 3 weeks postpartum.
Yeah, right.
So I remember I spouted something off about how I know how to read my cycle. I'm taking my temperature. I already know how this works. And I don't remember much of our encounter, but I do remember after the appointment, Jorge was giving me some gentle feedback, like, hey, I noticed you kept interrupting the doctor. I'm like, well, she was coming at me. She was coming at, you're postpartum, you're hormonal.
Honestly, postpartum, it feels like everything is a bit of an attack. So keep that one in mind.
And so I just remember, so she could tell that she wasn't going to get anywhere with me because I got very defensive with her. And she goes, well, I'm going to tell you right now, if you get pregnant, you cannot get pregnant within a year because you just had a C-section. And if you get pregnant less than a year, I'm going to make sure you get another C-section. And that was like the end of the conversation.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I'm not going to get pregnant. Well, I never used an alternative method of birth control. And we did not get pregnant within a year. So
that shows her, right?
Not only that, I also found out she was kind of trying to scare us because after I spoke to midwives and doctors, I found out you can actually attempt a VBAC, which is what I had within 18 months, birth to birth.
Oh,
so
wow.
Whole, don't get pregnant for 12 months was kind of her way of trying, I think, to scare us into the compliance. Because she was very much pushing the IUD with everybody else. And we were kind of in a group class where we did our, it was a group pregnancy class. And so we did everything together and our appointments would be off to the corner. So she was very used to that day. Like, just, do I need to renew your pill prescription? Do I need to sign you up for an IUD? Just tell me what you need. So they're not very much used. I don't think that they're used to hearing people say natural family planning, or if they are, they kind of find, at least her method was like trying to poke holes in it. How's that going to work?
Yeah, I honestly had a very similar experience, and I'm imagining like just literally the doctor checking off the items on the list on my postpartum appointment,
Yes.
which I feel like is an even bigger like topic to discuss, is how there is a serious lack of postpartum care for mothers, but that's not what we're talking about today. Um, we're talking about NFP and doctors. But I very much had the same experience of the doctor, you know, looked me in the eye and was like, "Okay, so what are we doing for birth control?" And I was like, I used NFP, so
Yeah.
I'm good." Like, I think I actually said that. I was like, "I'm good,"
Yeah.
and she's like turns away from me and was like, "Oh, okay, so you use the calendar rhythm method." And I was like, no, I don't, well, there's mucus and temperatures." I didn't even know like what to say in response to her saying, "Oh, you use the calendar rhythm method." And it's like, I know how to use NFP. I have been using it for a while. I know what the biomarkers are.
Like, I used it to conceive my child.
Right, exactly. But I like couldn't even get them out of my mouth when she said that. I was so nervous, and I was just like, it's more advanced now than that, and like
99% effective when
yeah. And you know, so I'm like stammering over here trying to like convince her that I'm not dumb or something. I don't know what I was trying to convince her of. And I vividly recall her turning around and she was like, "Well, we don't suggest that you get pregnant within 6 months. So you're going to need to be really careful." Yeah. And she, the way that she looked at me, and I'm not even sure if I can explain this, but it's like, it's almost like she was saying, "You're going to need to not have sex for 6 months."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, I just felt like someone had punched me in the stomach.
Right.
And
There's
it was, yeah.
about it. It's like, it weakens your resolve in that moment.
I was like, am I making the right choice?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And we should never have to question that.
But part of, you took it, I think you handled it much better than I did, because I just got defensive with her. And then she tells me, "Well, breastfeeding isn't going to stop you from getting pregnant." I said, I know that. And I did, because that's what I was taught in my symptothermal class, that it is effective up to a certain point. I said, I know, I know you can ovulate while you're written. So that's what my husband was referring to. Like, he kept interrupting her because I told him, because couldn't you see she was trying to knock us down? Like, so I was trying to stand up for her.
She was trying to hammer us down.
Absolutely. And so I think that was like my 2-week or 3-week postpartum appointment. And then I think I had another like 1.5 month one. And that was to check, because my first birth was a C-section, check on the scar. And I go in, and this time I asked for a nurse practitioner, because in my mind, they're less pushy than doctors. And so I saw the nurse practitioner, and she's like, "Okay, everything looks like you're healing great. Look at you. You've bounced back really well from the surgery. Can I help you with anything around birth control?" And I said, "I'm using natural family planning." And this time I said it in a tone of like, this is the end of the discussion. And she just looked at me and said, "Well, if this works for you, okay, just let me know if you need anything." Right. And
that's such a great response.
It was such a great response for me. And that in that moment, I walked out and I went to the receptionist and I said, "Can you please switch my OBGYN to this nurse practitioner?
Yeah.
And this is what I want to see for subsequent visits." And what was, and now that I think about it, there's like a difference between like hostile, tolerant, and acceptance.
Yes.
And I think when you're dealing with a doctor, you shouldn't put up with hostile ever, because that person, and this doesn't just apply to NFP, but I don't think that doctor would have thought I would have succeeded at a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after cesarean, just based on her tone, and you need a supportive doctor of your choices. Absolutely. And so that nurse practitioner, I now looking back, I'm like, she was tolerant. She was like, "Okay, you do what you want," but I could see the surprise in her face, because I can tell they don't often have patients who practice natural family planning.
Right. It's an what is the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh. It's uncommon.
Yeah, wow. And I think it's even unusual. Yeah, I would even
right.
go as far as to say that that in a world, especially now where we control everything on our apps and everything, you would meet somebody who would, oh my gosh, track their cycle and just see what happens. Oh, because that's what it sounds like to them, right? Like you're not doing anything to protect yourself from an unintended pregnancy. That's what it
right. That's what they see it as, because that's what their education has been. And their education hasn't been in fertility awareness for the most part, just kind of with the generic doctor. In both of our experiences, that clearly wasn't the case with our doctors. But I like what you mentioned about kind of the differences of hostile, tolerant, and accepting. And I'm kind of thinking I'm going to loop in like embracing. So accepting and embracing as that third level. So the hostile doctor, if you mention to your doctor you're using NFP and they start telling you it will not work, that you have to get on birth control, that, it's all based on fake things, and your doctor doesn't want to listen to you and talk with you, you need to find a new doctor.
Exactly.
Because it's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for your mental state. And it's also not healthy for your body itself, because they're pushing birth control on you.
And they're probably likely pushing other things on you. Like
exactly.
So this is somebody who isn't willing to work with you. They just they have already made up their mind and they're going to push it on you. That's probably not the kind of healthcare you want in the first place, regardless of NFP or not. Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you've got that second category of tolerant, this is where I'm going to say you're probably going to find most of the doctors in this category. Is you say, yes, I use NFP, and yeah, maybe they're like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're not excited about it. Or they're going to say, okay, well, birth control options are better, or, they'll say something like that, but they're not going to push it on you. That's fine, right? Your doctor may not agree with natural family planning because they just don't understand it. Of course, if you feel uncomfortable with that doctor, go find a new doctor. But you're going to have a much harder time finding a doctor in that accepting, embracing category. And if you have found a doctor there, amazing. Like, keep them forever. That's fantastic. And tell me who it is.
Yes. Yeah.
But really, you want to find a doctor in that tolerant to accepting, embracing zone where you can feel comfortable and empowered. That's huge.
Totally. And it's what pushed me to move to my third OBGYN after my second postpartum visit. She finishes the check, is washing her hands, and she's like, okay, what are you doing for birth control? And I said, I'm using and I totally noticed how I changed my language. I said, I'm using the Marquette method of fertility awareness. And I could tell she had no idea what I was talking about. And she looked at me kind of like with a question mark on her face. And I said, I basically measure my estrogen and my luteinizing hormone every single day, so I know where I am on my cycle. And then she just looked at me and said, okay, cool. Let me know if you change your mind. And
nice.
And at that point I was like, I'm sticking with her. I'm sticking with her because, again, I don't think she was like embracing her, like, that's awesome. But she said, yeah, that's fine. Do it, do you, which I appreciated. And I had the kind of, so I just felt like she was respectful of my choice. Never did she push back. Never did she question it. She said, all right, that sounds like it's working for you. But I also showed up in a much more different, I stayed away from kind of the trigger term that I think can be NFP.
Sure.
And I said, I'm using the Marquette method, because I think even amongst Catholics, like Marquette, what is that, right? But it's just another form of NFP. So I said, I'm using the Marquette method of fertility awareness. Again, because it's very like trendy right now, fertility awareness. And she was like, yeah, that's fine. If that works for you, let me know if you need anything different. And I said, yeah, I'm not. I mean, I didn't tell her that, but at that point I was like, okay, I also just need to be respectful of her job, which is to offer, and
right,
we're good.
Exactly. And I think you're really hitting the nail on the head right here with how we communicate using NFP to our doctor changes the conversation completely. So the first time that you mentioned to your doctor you were using NFP, and also like in my example, we were nervous. We didn't know what to say. We even maybe said it in a questioning way. Your doctor might look at that as like, you don't know what you're doing. And your doctor really probably has your best interest at heart. As far as they know, they may not know very much about the birth control pill, the synthetic hormones that are in it, and the long-term like effects that it can have on your body and your fertility. They may not understand all of those things, so they think they're doing the best for you by pushing birth control on you. But what you did, Yolanda, in the last example you were talking about, is you were so clear in exactly what you do, and you stated it as a fact. Yes. This is what I do. My name is Ellen Holloway. I use the symptothermal method to track my cycle and plan my family. Mm-hmm. If I said that to my doctor, I don't think that she would have turned around and gone, you know what you're doing, and like, don't get pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you told me how you responded to your doctor. I could see you shrug. And as a doctor, I'm sitting here with my, I know it all. I know what's best for you. And my patient right here is in front of me, and they're postpartum. They don't know what they're doing. I need to help them. So I like what you're saying, because we do kind of have to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's what Jesus would do, right?
Right.
You're not coming at us with like, they're not trying to make us feel bad or in my case, for example, it would have been it would have not been healthy to have gotten pregnant right away. She was right to be concerned, but the way we went about it wasn't the healthiest way to discuss.
Right. If you're using NFP and you are confident in your ability to use NFP, your doctor will see that confidence and not be concerned, like in your case, Yolanda, where your doctor really was concerned that you would get pregnant too quickly, because you didn't come with the confidence of using and knowing how to use NFP. And so your doctor was actually concerned because you had just had a cesarean section, and that would have been, it could have been pretty detrimental if you'd gotten pregnant right away.
And Ellen, that also raises a point, because now that I'm reflecting on it, I think I wasn't confident in postpartum symptothermal method. There was something there, because up until I got pregnant, I had perfect, textbook cycles. Like it was easy. But then here I was, I had just delivered a baby, and I still hadn't taken the postpartum NFP class.
Yeah.
Right? So part of me maybe was being defensive, because I didn't know how it was going to work when I didn't have a cycle. And so one thing I would also recommend our listeners, particularly women, is make sure that you're well educated on if you're going to be postpartum, think about what you're going to do. Don't wait to get to the postpartum period to do it, because I've done that, and we kind of snoozed through the class because the baby was crying. I was nursing during the class, and so the second time around when I was postpartum, I was much more prepared. I took the classes before I had the baby.
Sure.
And then when I went to my postpartum appointment, I was like, yeah, ask me about Marquette. I'm ready. Come on. And that didn't even happen, right? I just told her, look, I measure my hormones every day, and that's how I decide when I'm going to have a child, or if I'm going to have one at all for now.
Absolutely. That is such a good point, is make sure that you are confident in using NFP. Even before you talk to your doctor about it, talk to your instructor. Are you confident in using NFP, especially when you're in some of those more difficult situations, high stress, postpartum, premenopause, all of those times they're totally different looking cycles. So make sure that you are talking to your instructor, or get another instructor if you've moved out of the area or something like that. You don't have contact with that instructor, because that confidence will show with your doctor if you aren't confident. Because I was the same. I mean, I wasn't really confident using NFP postpartum quite yet, because this was the first time that I had ever been postpartum. this is my first kid. I didn't know what it was going to look like. And yeah, I had textbook cycles. They were beautiful. Like they were so easy. And yeah, now they're all over the place because I'm still I would still consider myself in that postpartum, like crazy cycle range.
Yeah. I think for the first 6 cycles, right, they say you're still kind of like, woo,
Yeah.
all over the place. But that brings me to another point that NFP isn't the what you learn from NFP about your body sometimes isn't just helpful for pregnancy. I've seen one of my first instructor for the symptothermal method used it to actually diagnose a condition she had because she noticed she was having very unusual cycles. And, they went to the doctor, they couldn't get to the root cause, but through the data she'd accumulated through her charts and her low temperature, they were able to, the doctor was saying, well, like, I think she had, it was either, I don't want to say if it was PCOS, but it was something similar where they finally realized, you know what, we can actually find a doctor who knows about like Creighton, and which is what the method they were using at the time. And they adapted it to the health conditions she had. But she was able to use that data she accumulated through her cycles to actually tell the doctor, I think there's something wrong here, and here's what I'm seeing.
That is such a good point. And yes, it's absolutely like something you should do. If you notice that something's a little off in your cycle, talk to your instructor first, probably. And if it is something concerning, your instructor will tell you to go talk to your doctor about it. And do that. Please do that. Please go talk to your doctor. And yes, that doctor may not know what exactly is going on, but it's all a conversation with your instructor and your doctor and yourself. Your instructor can help you in talking to your doctors, asking for the right labs to take. You can, hormone testing if you need to check those. Yeah, it can be thyroid issues. And so, yeah, the knowledge that you're gaining from charting your cycle can be brought to your doctor in that way. And you can explain, I know that something wrong is wrong here. Let's say I've got this continuous mucus sign, and this hasn't been the case. I would like to get my estrogen levels checked because I'm pretty sure something's wrong here. That's a pretty common thing.
Yeah, I'm not ovulating. How's your progesterone, and or very low temperatures could be a thyroid issue. So there are things that you can actually glean from NFP that could help you when you're trying to kind of diagnose something possibly.
Right. And this is
the case, but there's some stuff that I've heard I've heard people use NFP say, oh, my doctor thought my temperature charting was so helpful. They had no idea that I was doing this all along. Right.
It can be so helpful. And again, I want to stress, like, having an instructor is so important. Just having someone that you can send an email to, or phone call or text message, however that instructor communicates, and ask them about irregularities in your cycle, because your instructor in a lot of cases is not going to be a medical professional. In some cases, yes, and some methods actually require a medical professional, but other methods don't. So they're not necessarily going to be able to diagnose you, but they can help you figure out what you need to go talk to your doctor about, and what kind of things they can suggest, some things to talk to your doctor about. And that can just be so incredibly helpful.
Totally. And I'll give you an example. When I was pregnant last time, I developed subclinical hypothyroidism. So I was put on a thyroid pill to keep, it was a medication to keep my thyroid at a healthy level during the pregnancy. As soon as I delivered, I stopped the medication, and my thyroid went back to normal. So it was something that my body just was like, with the pregnancy, like, oh, I don't know what's going on. And I remember talking to my instructor, and she said, I need to know if you take a thyroid medication, because that's going to impact how your cycle looks, and and how we chart, what we look out for. And I didn't end up going back on it just because my body regulated on its own. But those are the things that, yes, that's why talking to your instructor, and then also just being transparent with your doctor will really help along the way. And again, for all they know, you're doing the charting because, again, fertility-based methods are really helpful now. But in that case, that's data that can help them. That can very much help them in the situation you're looking at something that you can't get to the bottom. Why am I always tired and my temperature is consistently low and I'm not ovulating? There could be something there. Right.
And I want to jump back to something you kind of mentioned a little while ago in the episode, but I want to be really clear about it. And we're going to actually be doing an episode in a little while, kind of redefining these terms and helping you guys. But we use NFP on this podcast a lot because this is a Catholic podcast. And we're talking a lot about the theology behind NFP and the prayer and discernment behind it. But in the medical world, the term is fertility awareness. Yes. And so when you're talking to your doctor, using the term NFP can often be just like a huge roadblock for them because in the medical world, NFP is synonymous to the rhythm method.
Yes. Or just synonymous with doesn't work.
Right. Right? Yeah, NFP, the term NFP in the medical world often means, they're going to get pregnant in like 2 months.
Yeah. And I felt that, like, I felt kind of this strong judgment of like, these people are going to have 4 kids before I know it.
Yeah.
That was difficult. I could sense it.
Right. So talking to your doctor about that you use a fertility awareness based method, actually calling out the method that you use. I use Creighton to chart my cycle. I use Marquette to chart my cycle and measure my hormone levels, right? Like calling out exactly what you do can be extremely helpful in that situation.
Absolutely. Yes. So the way I answered the question the first time to how I answered it the last time, just worlds of a difference, where I said, yeah, I'm doing the Marquette method of fertility awareness method and check my hormones every day, specifically estrogen and luteinizing hormone. And then I decide what I'm going to do. Said, for now, we won't be having any children. And that was it. That was, okay, cool. Just let me know if you need anything else.
Right. Because what that tells your doctor is that you're confident in your family planning intentions and method. And that's what your doctor is really looking for. Your doctor is looking for something that you're going to be confident in. Because again, we're giving them grace. They don't understand what fertility awareness and NFP has become because it probably wasn't part of their general education. Yeah. Now, again, we are not talking about the doctors who are fertility awareness doctors and who are really into this. Obviously, they know what they're doing.
Right.
But for your run-of-the-mill OB, they're not necessarily, or sorry, your OBGYN, they're not necessarily going to know what the symptothermal method is, what the Creighton method is, what the Billings, et cetera. We could go on and on and on, right? Yeah. So if you are confident in your method that you're using, they will see that confidence and let you be confident in that, right? They want what's best for you. Your doctor really does want what's best for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I appreciate that right now we are calling out, like, give them that grace, because in many instances when they have heard of it, it was very likely not in a positive, pre-K class.
Right. So one thing I also want to mention is we touched a lot. We were talking about those 3 different types of doctors, right? You have the hostile doctor, you have the accepting, or you have the tolerant doctor, then you have the accepting, embracing doctor. We talked about those first 2, but that accepting, embracing doctor. Now, let's say you get into your gynecologist and you say, yeah, I track my cycle using the symptothermal method and it's going well for me. And they say, wow, that's really cool. Can I learn more? Yeah. Or they want to have a conversation with you about it. Awesome. A really great place to direct your doctor is facts about fertility. I believe it's factsaboutfertility.org. Is that right? Oh no. Okay, we're gonna put it in the show notes, so it'll be there. That link. That is a resource by doctors for doctors about fertility awareness based methods, and it is a fabulous resource. It has lots of things on there, blog posts and information that your doctor can read, but also something else that this organization is doing is they are doing sessions in medical school for doctors and post-medical school for doctors and nurses to learn about fertility awareness. So that is a really great place to send your doctor if you have a doctor who's like, wow, I'm really interested in this. I want to learn more.
Yeah, factsaboutfertility.org.
Okay, I was right. Yay.
Yeah, fertility.org. And when you do come across somebody who's like not only acceptant, but kind of excited for you, I did come across somebody like that when during my last delivery, the nurse, I don't know how we started talking about charting the cycle. And again, I'm very careful in these like secular environments to use language that they can more easily grasp. So I said something like, yeah, I chart my cycle. And she goes, oh, that's so cool. Did you know you can plan like the gender based on it if you know your cycle well enough? I'm like, well, I haven't heard about this, but now I'll have to look into it. She goes, yeah, it's so great because you don't have to use the hormones and like the pill and stuff. And I thought, I can't believe I'm having this conversation in a Santa Clara hospital.
Yeah.
But it does happen there. And I don't think for her it was necessarily like a faith-based approach, just more so I don't like chemicals.
Right.
and I think fertility charting is awesome.
And, I feel like we kind of like keep throwing things in there. That's good to mention. That's good to mention. But something to be clear with your doctor about too is I don't want to put those chemicals in my body. I don't want to put synthetic hormones in my body. That is a big reason why I don't use artificial birth control. And really being clear on that front, your doctor can't really argue with you.
You don't have, yeah, exactly. You don't have to launch into the theology of the body. In most cases, they don't have the time anyway to hear about it.
Right. You're looking at like a 10-minute appointment that you have.
Yeah, exactly. And at least where I go, it's a 15-minute and you can tell they're like running you through.
Yep.
So if you just say, I don't want it, that should be more than enough. Like I have concerns and I choose not to, just given the risks. That should be more than enough.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do a quick review because I feel like we threw in so many different things all over this episode. Okay. So what not to do when you talk to your doctor? Don't be nervous.
Yeah, I think that the first thing you should, well, one thing is just be ready for your medical professional to maybe not give you a hug and a high five when you mention what you're doing.
Yes.
And that's okay because as we mentioned, your typical doctor you're dealing with is probably not trained or knows extensively about NFP. And that's okay. So just know that if they come at you with questions or go, well, how's that going to work? It's normal. It's what you should expect. That doesn't mean you need to sit there like we did and just kind of be a little like, oh, I'm rambling off. Don't ramble. Have your sentence ready to describe what you're doing, or just name it and say, I'm doing this, and then just own it too.
Yes.
And this is what I'm doing, and this is what's right for our family.
Absolutely. And that's it. And here's the sentence for you. My name is blank. I use the blank method to chart my cycle. There's your sentence. Yeah. You can add in more if you want to, but if you say that sentence, you fill in those blanks, that will help you come across to your doctor as very confident and allow you to also feel that confidence. Mm-hmm. If you prepare that sentence or that couple of sentences that you're going to say, you won't get caught in the doctor's office when you're 14 or when you're postpartum or whenever, and they say, oh, well, what are you using for birth control? And you start stammering like us.
Yes. And my other takeaway too is if they do start promoting something else, well, the pill is like this effective, and say yes. And my method is also evidence-based, and I don't want to do the other. then it nips it, right? Then it nips it in the bud and like,
Absolutely.
I'm not here to explore. I know what I'm doing. Thank you.
Exactly. Right. That's huge. You're not there to explore you're not there to explore birth control methods.
Right.
You know what method you want to use. And if you want to explore different natural family planning methods, your doctor's probably not going to be the person to talk to about that.
Yeah. Unless they're like a fertility awareness trained doctor, probably not. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Yolanda, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I'm actually like stoked about the next time that I'm going to go talk to a doctor about NFP. I'm very excited to just be like, this is what I do.
Own your NFP method, whatever it is. Right?
Yeah, right? Own it.
To say NFP is kind of a blanket term. So just own your method. Walk in there saying, this is what I'm doing. And it's awesome. It's great. And I'm really happy with it. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. I love that. I'm totally going to add, I'm going to add that in. Thank you so much for asking. I use the symptothermal method. Do you have any questions about it? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Yolanda. I know that you're going to be back on because I just keep texting you and saying, hey, I've got this great idea for an episode. And you keep saying yes. So,
I wish I would have heard this the first time. So before I went in there.
I know, me too. I think this was really helpful for myself. Thanks for listening. I hope you are as empowered as I am after this conversation to go and talk to your doctor about using fertility awareness and NFP. The next episode that we're going to have, I'm very excited about. We're joined by a dear friend of mine, Martha, and we're talking to your family about NFP. So this is your immediate family, your parents, siblings, etc. So be sure to check that out in a couple of weeks when it comes out. And if you haven't already, head on over to Instagram at Charting Toward Intimacy and give us a follow. We love to hear from our listeners. And if you have someone in your life that you want tips on how to talk to NFP about, or if you have a suggestion for an episode topic, maybe not having to do with this series exactly, reach out to us. We would love to hear from you and would love to hear your ideas. Until next time.